What's up guys, and welcome back to On the Brick, and welcome to the first video in a 3-part series. I've been wanting to make a video specifically about non-LEGO or LEPN for almost a year now. Seriously, it was one of the first videos that I ever wanted to make. And while I've actually done a lot of audio recording for that and a good amount of editing already, I realized that video was missing something. I think that video would be totally fine on its own and it would get the point across, but it was missing a lot of context. And that video is already almost an hour long, so instead of making it one giant monstrosity, I figured I would just split it up into 3 videos. The first, which we'll be talking about today, is going to be looking exclusively at LEGO. The second video will be looking at anything and everything that is not LEGO, but also not LEPN. And the third video will be looking exclusively at non-LEGO and why you're probably wrong about it. I'm going to ask you to do something that for some reason nowadays is a little challenging to do. I'm going to ask you to open your mind and listen. I'm going to be talking about things and say things that you might not like. While by no means is today's video going to be a hate letter towards LEGO, because it's absolutely not, I'm also not just going to be praising them this entire time and saying all wonderful things. If you're watching this video, then I assume you already know what LEGO is. You've already experienced it to some capacity, probably built some sets, and have lots of wonderful memories. I don't really need to spend time talking about all the good stuff because honestly, you already know that. This video will be split into 4 parts for your convenience, so let's get into it. Part 1. A brief history of LEGO. As some of you know, I used to work at my local LEGO store. I was a supervisor who was mainly in charge of the stockroom in the back. On the very first day that I got hired, along with all the boring paperwork that you have to do at any job, one thing I had to do was watch this History of LEGO video. You've probably seen it before. It's a wonderfully made video with some nice little animation about the history of LEGO. And afterwards, I had to write in this little book that every employee has what I took away from that video. And I wrote something like, never give up. I mean, they faced a lot of challenges. The creator of the original building blocks was born in 1904 in England and didn't make his first company until 1932. They actually started by making wooden toys that they would import from Russia and then later began introducing their own designs. However, they weren't very happy with using wood and so eventually switched over to plastic. And it was at this time that they created the interlocking building cube, which was patented in 1940. It wouldn't be until after World War II though that they would create the self-locking building blocks, which were smaller versions of the building cubes, and these were notable for being able to be stacked on top of each other using studs on top to interlock themselves, and they also had the ability to include things like panel-like doors or windows on the sides through small slits. The very well-known 2x4 studded brick was patented in 1947. Wait. 1947, that's not right. And I'm pretty sure that LEGO called it the Atomic binding brick, and that wasn't Kurt Christensen born in Denmark and not England? Hey, are you sure this is the history of LEGO and not like something else? Oh, it's the history of the building block? I thought that was LEGO. What do you mean LEGO stole the design? Yeah, I'm not sure how many people actually know this, but Kurt Christensen did not come up with the LEGO brick design. The history that I was just talking about was actually of a man named Hilary Page who came up and created Kitty Crafts, which was the original LEGO. And LEGO the company claims that in the late 1950s, they asked Kitty Crafts if they would object to the LEGO brick, which by the way was actually several years after they had already made their version, but Kitty Crafts denies that this ever happened. And there are several things to take into account here which make me believe that no, Kurt Christensen openly stole this design. First, fearing that his company was going to collapse, Hilary Page ended up committing suicide. And at the time of his death, he had no idea that LEGO had taken his design. Second, the only reason we even know about this fair that Kurt Christensen went to and found the piece from is because of him. He went to this thing alone and told the story of what happened. from his perspective, of course. And I don't know about you, but I personally have been to a lot of fairs. And yes, we are talking about almost 100 years later, but the basic concept is pretty much the same. We made something new we would like to show you. A few years back, I went to a tech fair downtown, and they had a lot of really cool things. They had some nice computers, some new VR stuff, and a bunch of stuff that I just did not understand, and a lot of really boring things. But every single company represented there was selling something. That's the point. They may have been selling this new machine that you can make to use your own things, but they were always selling something that they made as well. Because it's a company, so they want to sell their products and make money. And I find it really difficult to believe that Kurt Christensen went to this fair, saw this plastic molding machine, saw the bricks, and somehow didn't realize that it was a product Kitty Crafts was selling. And even if he didn't know, it's still kind of a scummy thing to see this and then go, oh, I'm gonna make this and sell it. And I know that's a thing that still happens nowadays. I mean, seriously, how many people have tried to copy M&R Productions? For instance, here is someone who just copied word for word M&R Productions' description on his Dio review. He left out all the affiliated stuff, of course, but yeah, the description was 100% taken and the style of video is extremely similar. But this is actually not the same at all. This particular user recognized that what M&R Productions does works and has helped make him successful. While the video itself is similar, it's different enough, and this guy actually has made a ton of other videos that, while still mimicking M&R, are his own thing. I also specifically chose this guy because a few months ago he said he wasn't going to be making any more videos, and then deleted that and has made a ton of videos since then. Point being is things do get a little muddled when it comes to the legal side of all this. Yes, Kitty Crafts patented the 2x4 brick over 10 years before Lego ever became a thing, but they patented it in England. And unfortunately, even today, there is no such thing as a worldwide patent. Someone should tell that guy who made the 100,000 piece Minas Tirith. I mean, he has a big old disclaimer on his page saying that it's a worldwide design patent. But this means that even though Kitty Crafts was legally registered in England, that doesn't mean it would hold up in Denmark. And I have the feeling Kurt Christensen knew this and took advantage of that to make Lego, especially because in 1981, Lego actually went and acquired Kitty Crafts, which on its own absolutely doesn't sound that bad, until you realize the reason they were trying to acquire Kitty Craft was because they were in the middle of suing Tyco, and they were suing Tyco for illegally stealing their design, and they technically couldn't do that because they didn't own the design. Lego actually ended up losing that lawsuit, and in my opinion, rightfully so. I mean, if you're going to steal the design from someone else, whatever the context may be, it is undeniable that Kurt Christensen did not come up with the original design himself. It's incredibly scummy to then go to other people and take legal action for them doing exactly what you did. Part 2. Double Standards. I told this story in a very recent video, but in 2008, my family and I were going to Chicago. At the time, there was no local Lego store here, but there was one in Chicago, so I spent the entire summer working with my dad and saving up money so I could go and buy the UCS Death Star 2. That was my first experience with the Lego store, and boy did it change my life. I did have to wait until we came home to be able to build it, and it took 13-year-old me basically 3 full days to put together. You have to remember, there were no numbered bags at this time. And it was the single largest set that I had ever made. I severely underestimated the space I would need for it. At that time, I was also watching a ton of Lego YouTube channels. Some of you are probably so young, you don't even realize that at that time, videos had a maximum length of 10 minutes. This video would already have to be over if that was still the case. But what I'm trying to say is that I have grown up with Lego. Obviously, this is why I have my channel, this is why my apartment is full of Lego, and why my room back at my parents' house still has a ton of Lego that my mom keeps asking me about. I promise you I will take care of it one day. There is a home video of me, which I will obviously not show, where I was turning 2 years old, and the first gift I opened was Lego. It was like the Duplo equivalent at the time, but it was basically Lego. I love Lego, the company Lego, this thing. But just because I am does not mean that I will pretend as if they have never done anything wrong or that they are perfect. And that is fine. Sometimes loving something means recognizing its flaws. If you've watched this channel for any length of time, then you're probably aware I will show off non-Lego sets, either builds like Kobe or even things using non-Lego pieces. And on every single video, I will receive criticism about that choice. It always tends to be the same few things, and most of the time it just comes across as someone with a 12-year-old mentality complaining about plastic bricks. But let's take some of those criticisms and put them into the context of Lego so we can see how much better Lego is. That's how it'll work, right? The biggest criticism is always how the designs were stolen, which we'll talk more about that in a later video, but obviously that's kind of ironic. And that's why I started this video the way I did. Can't really complain about people stealing Lego designs when the very concept of Lego is a stolen idea. But the second biggest criticism I get by far is always talking about how the quality of the pieces is bad or poor. I know a lot of the people giving me that criticism are young, but do you remember what Lego used to be like? There's a reason that Benny from the Lego movie has a crack in his helmet. That was such a common occurrence, they turned it into a joke. Remember how I said I got the Death Star 2 back in 2008? On the day that I finished building it, my mom accidentally nudged it while going into my room, and it knocked over and fell apart. My mom is a gentle and careful person. It's not like she slammed into it. And I also know from future experiences just how easy it is to knock that thing over. A few years earlier, I built this Star Destroyer, and I couldn't take it from my living room up to my bedroom without some piece or two falling off. It really felt unstable, and I have never really touched it since then. In a more recent example, in one of Rich Boy J's latest videos on his Star Killer base, he talks about how his order of dark red pieces was pretty bad as a lot of them came broken, or broke as he was building them, because even today, dark red Lego pieces are notoriously bad. If you've ever messed with old Lego pieces here, and I don't mean like 10 years old, I mean like old pieces, then you know that they can crack or break easily. And on my shelf by my bed, I have a ton of minifigures that have cracks on their arms or their sides, and a ton of old ones that I had to get rid of for that very reason. So it's really unfair to say that other companies struggle with the quality of their pieces when Lego has struggled, and in some cases continues to struggle with their pieces today. Yes, it is really, really nice that I could take a Lego piece from 2021 and a Lego piece from 1970, and the two would be compatible and work fine. But that piece from 1970 is going to be more brittle and is far more likely to crack. So not only is that comparison simply not true, because non-Lego pieces are perfectly fine, but we'll talk about that later, but you're also comparing a product that has been out for over 60 years to a product that has been out for 5. New companies have growing pains. I mean, nobody watched the XFL last year expecting it to be NFL quality. Rest in peace, Beer Snake. Part 3. Disappointed! I live in an apartment complex, I'm not gonna shout that. If I asked you right now to think of a set that you were disappointed in, you would be able to think of more than one. When I worked at the Lego store, you know what set happened to come out? That's right, the UCS Y-Wing. And underneath that Y-Wing, we had shelves full of the First Order ATST. It was the bane of my existence trying to figure out where to put that in the back room. We literally never had to restock it. But there's also sets like the LEGO Ideas Back to the Future DeLorean, or the 2016 Death Star, which was a more expensive, slightly upgraded version of a set that had been on shelves for 8 years at that point. There's the infamous Assault on Hoth UCS set. All of the buildable figures that no one ever bought. Galador? Do you remember Galador? If you do, it's probably only because of how notoriously bad it is. Lego's original Technic figures like this Stormtrooper are just horrible. There's Fabuland, which I'm going to say most of you probably don't even know about. And let's not forget the fact that some minifigures have just looked absolutely terrible. This Squidward, while looking kind of like Squidward, also isn't really that good. And of course there's the more recent example where Tech's helmet from the Bad Batch is way too long. And those are all just things that came to my mind. I'm sure you can come up with plenty of examples as well. But it's not just bad or disappointing sets, which there have been plenty of. If you are one of the few people who watched my review on the new probe droid, then you'll know that I was missing an entire bag of accessory pieces. Technically 2, because apparently 2 of them are supposed to come in the set. I also recently purchased the new Batmobile, which was missing some pieces, and if you remember, even the Cantina set had a few missing pieces. Here's a video from a guy called BrickLover18, which, considering that he almost has 100,000 subscribers, really should have more views on his videos. But he talks about how he was building this Pirates of Barracuda base set when he was missing an entire numbered bag. So a lot of people complain that non-LEGO sets are gonna have missing pieces, which isn't really the case. But in the last year alone, I've had several personal examples of poor quality control from LEGO and easily found more from others. And this guy had to wait over a month to get the replacement pieces, which is a little ridiculous, honestly. Part 3.5, Mandr. I said that there was only going to be 4 parts, but then I realized this kind of deserves a section of its own, so here we are. You probably know who M&R Productions is, and if you don't, then you're probably my girlfriend who's just watching this to support me. Hi, I love you. But if you've been following him or LEGO news in general, then you know he was recently kicked out of LAN, or the LEGO Ambassador Network. And a big reason for that was because M&R was talking about potential leaks. Let me say that in a different way. Ryan, or M&R Productions, made a video in which the only thing you saw was him in his bedroom, where he talked about potentially leaked information. He himself did not leak this information. As far as I'm aware, he did not show any pictures of leaked items. It was literally just him talking about information that was already out there. And LEGO responded by threatening him with a copyright strike. And that's also just incredibly scummy, especially because Ryan actually didn't do anything wrong. At least here in America, he can legally talk about those leaks. Again, as long as he wasn't actually showing anything, he didn't do anything wrong. So while it really would have sucked for Ryan and done more damage than necessary, he could have and should have appealed the copyright strike had it been given, and LEGO would have lost that. And what's even more ridiculous is that because of how long it takes, by the time the copyright strike was resolved, the information would have been publicly available anyway. It literally would not have mattered just a month or 2 later. But that's if LEGO only gave him 1 copyright strike. If they had chosen to give him multiple copyright strikes on multiple videos, his channel would have been terminated and he would have lost everything. And this is a guy who has literally built his entire career from LEGO. He is one of the biggest LEGO channels out there. He's posting videos just about every single day. Wait, why do these two use the same picture? He literally has over 2,400 videos all about LEGO. And the way that he got repaid was by basically getting slapped in the face. And while I know that LEGO will never let me join LAN because I talk about competitive products as if it's a bad thing, I also know a lot of people who are just put off by that. What would be the point of joining it if they're just gonna treat you like that? It really seems like a repetitive thing here where LEGO decides to take legal action against people who have done no wrong. Part 4. Let's get personal. Alright, this is the part where I actually talk about my experience with the LEGO store and part of why I have a big problem with them. I have a lot of really good memories from the LEGO store, and there are an equal amount of reasons as to why I no longer work there. But I'm not going to sugarcoat this. One of the biggest reasons I don't anymore is because on a daily basis, I was dealing with racism and discrimination. At the time that I left the store, I was the only non-white worker there. There was also a guy who was half Asian and happened to be my best friend there, and he also struggled with a lot of things. When I got hired at the LEGO store, we actually had 2 other Hispanic employees. One who got fired because after requesting a day off to go to his sister's wedding, he wasn't given it and went to his sister's wedding anyway, and I know for a fact that my boss lied about that to HR. and the second who had a change in her school schedule and was basically forced to quit because the work side wouldn't adjust, even though schedules were put out 3 weeks in advance specifically so changes could be made. I never had any racial slurs or derogatory terms thrown my way, and thankfully not, because then we would have had a serious issue. But I've experienced enough racism and discrimination in my life to know when it's happening. And I try to handle this through the proper means that are there. But at the end of the day, I was the one out of a job, and that's always going to stick with me. Anytime I see anything LEGO related, that will always be there. When LEGO had the chance to do the right thing, they decided to defend the scum of the earth racist. I only go back to that store because that absolute piece of garbage doesn't work there anymore. And no, I am not going to give them any sympathy. They don't deserve it. I don't know what happened to them, and I honestly do not care. But that is what my experience with LEGO was like. So I will never pretend like LEGO is some perfect and flawless company, nor will I ever defend some of the stupid choices that they make. Because I'm certain that at least one person is going to try and rebuttal every single thing that I've said in here and try to defend LEGO as if it's okay. So try to defend the racism, I dare you. They sell a lot of wonderful products that I will happily continue buying. Because I also recognize that it was one bad apple and a few horrible people behind the scenes. That absolute scum of the earth is not the person who designs the sets or anything like that, and so I'm happy to continue buying them. But I do ask you to please don't let LEGO keep getting away with mistakes or with problems. Because by recognizing that these problems exist and saying we won't take any more, LEGO as a company has to improve. They have already rightfully earned a reputation for being a really good top quality company, and there will always be something that slips through the cracks, but that doesn't mean it's flawless. But now it's your turn, and I would really absolutely love to hear your thoughts on all this and anything you have to say. Please remember to be respectful, especially towards others who may have a differing opinion than yours. I am going to ask of you to please like this video and remember to subscribe if you want to see those future videos coming out. Also ring that bell so you can be notified when that happens. A huge thank you to all of my patrons who help make videos like this even possible. I sincerely appreciate all of your continued support, and a special thanks to Jonathan and Project Elements. Thank you all so much for watching. This is going to be an interesting one, and I will see you next time.